bulk of what's on the wire. There's a little bit left up here that you'd clean up before you move on. And you can see I'm looking at tendrils there that I'm cutting away to get them off the wire. Not necessarily the vine itself. You need to be careful in doing that. I'm not going to go bang and cut that one that's still attached. So you're looking at the tendrils. You might cut the top of that one off because you're not going to need the length. And again, being careful where that one comes from. That's unattached, that's fine. Up here the same. Cut through a tendril. You can see I'm not actually cutting these canes so much as the tendrils that are holding them onto these wires. If you end up chopping away at canes, you're just sort of wasting your time and making lots of cuts, and a lot of stuff ends up down here. So there's nothing that's ended up down here. It's all in the middle of the row. Okay, so we've got to the point where we're going to wrap down. The choice to wrap down, again, position and strength. So we're trying to create that V position with the vine and leave ourselves at least 1 or 2 spur positions for next year. This vine doesn't have particularly great spur position. What I would call perfect spur position would be, you think about the vines, there's a root structure in this vine that's picking up nutrient and water and pushing it through the xylem and phloem in this trunk. As it moves up through the trunk, it has an outward flow, like a tree or any plant. There's a flow that's going left and right through this main structure, through 4 or 5 year old wood, up to 2 year old wood, up to 1 year old wood, up to fruit, up to leaves. So that with that in mind, the flow structure in a vine, the best position for spurs are here, because you're getting good direct flow for good strong canes left and right of that vine. For various reasons, this vine over the years hasn't had that spur position, or it has had, and it's so old, and we've done some restructuring that it's in the process of finding good spur position again. This is a reasonable spur position, and there isn't much spur position on the other side. If you have good spur position, you then choose canes that have good flow, if you choose them out of the spur position in that year. If you have poor spur position, you have the possibility of choosing canes like this one out of what is possibly poor flow, because you've got multiple cuts in the top here which cause dieback in the top of the vine and create dead space in the vine, so interrupted flow. This external flow is really strong flow. Does that make sense?
Yep.
The more cuts that are made through that middle, the more depth you're having through that center, what you call the pith in the vine, or the central point around which the xylem and phloem flow, which are more external to the central point. That's a really important foundation in your head when you're leaving spur pruning, that sort of structure upward and outward. So having said that, there's a difficulty in this vine that's in the choices, that we don't have that very obvious spur position. So we're still looking for strength and position. Okay, reasonable strength in that, but quite high and dislocated from the crown. Very good strength in that one, but coming out of that poor position. Pretty good spur position, and you can see 2 strong canes. Really good direct flow. It's quite obviously given very good canes out of that good direct flow we're talking about.
And does it not make a difference that they're both coming from the same spots?
As in the 2 canes are coming from the same spot?
Flow, does it not need...
Yeah, I'll talk about that.
Sorry.
We won't take the left and right from that one position.
Yeah, because I thought you maybe take too much energy off the one spot, and that's maybe not good for the flow either.
Correct. Well, you have,
from what you
a small amount of flow from there.
Yeah.
Yep. So what we're trying to do is leave ourselves with good position. So in thinking about this year and next year, which was your point, okay, I'm thinking about how am I going to leave a good spur position and still have good canes for this year. Okay, so I'm going to make a structural decision now that leaves me with good bud position this year and good spur position next year. And I'm going to say that's still a strong cane, even though it's coming out of what I don't like as a position. I'm going to use that this year. So if I use that cane to wrap here this year, so I've already made my decision in my head. I'm going to go right here with this one. Left here, this one looks very obvious to me to go left, okay? So if I decide my pruning decision is to go right here and left here, two strong cones with length, I have some options for where I can leave my spur, okay? And I'm not gonna break these cones, so I'm gonna go ahead. Oh no, actually, the way we would. So the first thing I'm gonna do is wrap, okay? And when I'm gonna wrap, I wanna take out laterals. That's another word that I didn't use before. Any small 1-year-old cane coming out of a 1-year-old cane is called a lateral, okay? And it's a non-fruiting from this year. It's actually a indication of vigor. If you're getting a lot of lateraling, you get a lot of vigor in the vine, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it might be a little bit out of balance with too much lateraling. So we're cleaning up the tendrils and the laterals on that vine, ready to wrap it. This vine, as I had mentioned, is a 3/4 wrap. So we're looking to get this cane wrapped 3/4 of the way along. So how do we know 3/4 of the way along? The easiest way for me is to put my foot down in between the two vines. I can see halfway really easily if I use my foot as an indicator. Now I look up and say, right, 3/4 is here. That's where I want to get this vine to, because we're over wrapping in this instance. If I was doing a halfway wrap, I'm obviously going to here. Same would apply in what I'm going to show you with a 3/4 wrap, how we're going to finish it, would apply to the halfway. Okay, lots to take in, but I'm going to show you one other important thing. You can see this vine, the way it's naturally sat, is flowing really diagonally across this wire, leaving a lot of open wire. I really like, if it's naturally sitting there, I'm going to push it over the other side. See the way it stands up there and sits a lot closer to that wire? So where it's naturally sitting, you push it over the other side, it's going to stand up and naturally sit up on that wire harder. And that's a really good start before you prune. This is where I was talking about before, you need to put your secateurs away. You need two hands to wrap. If you don't use two hands to wrap, you'll break cones. You take shortcuts and try to manhandle a cane with one hand, particularly sitting against the wire, you'll break it. It's okay then with two hands to hear this. Hear that? You do that with two hands, that's fine. You're bending that in between the two nodes in the internatal gap, you're bending that right where it's going to fall over the wire. That's actually made it quite pliable now to push over. Different varieties are different amount of pliability, and even different clones with Pinot are as well. You'll find some just snap more, particularly cold mornings. So that's one wrap there. Without being tight, we're not trying to strangle this vine onto the wire. We're just wrapping it on 2 or 3 times. Again, where the wrap is, again, just a little turn like that. And then back again over the wire. Another turn. Back again, and you'll find it'll sit there quite happily, because you've just given it a little bit of a tweak where it now finds its natural sitting point. Again, there's halfway, we're going to 3/4. When you're wrapping a vine, it will grow all these canes off this 1-year-old shoot during the year, and then will grow fruit. If you have a big year like 2019, where all the bunches were 150 grams, not 50 grams, that's a lot of weight on that cane. If we don't secure that cane, the fruit will pull that cane off the wire during the year with the weight of the fruit. So we need to secure it. We use zip ties or wire ties. These zip ties are biodegradable over a long period. They do take a while to break down, but they do break down. The wire ties are obviously biodegradable, being metal, and slow breakdown as well over a couple of years. At the 3/4 point where we want to tie it down, I'm going to tie it down before the last bud because that's my 3/4 point at the moment, and you'll see what I'm going to do with the last bud in a moment. You'll need to have a close look at this. So I've tied that down before the last bud. That last bud is now constricted, so I want to get that last bud out. If you look closely, every bud along here has a black line through it. See that black line? There's a line you can see that every bud has moving across the cane. Can you all see that?
Yep. Yeah.
It's really obvious when you have a close look at it. If you cut directly through that black line, you take away the bud,